7 Mental Rules for Consistency. There's a version of you that started something with complete sincerity, a routine, a goal, a practice, something that genuinely mattered. And for a while, it worked. You showed up, you felt the momentum. And then, quietly, without any dramatic reason, you stopped. Not because you gave up, not because you failed, you just drifted. And what followed wasn't just the absence of the habit, it was something heavier, a low-grade confusion about why you couldn't seem to hold on to the things you actually wanted. Most people who experience this assume the problem is discipline or willpower or some character flaw that other, more together people simply don't have. The narrative we've inherited says that consistency is a moral quality, something the strong possess and the weak lack. If you couldn't stay consistent, the story goes, you just didn't want it badly enough. But that story is wrong, and more importantly, it's doing real damage to how you understand yourself. What we're actually talking about, the real reason consistency feels slippery for so many people, has almost nothing to do with motivation or character. It has everything to do with how your brain is structured, how your nervous system learned to protect you, and how the mental rules governing your behavior were written long before you were old enough to consciously choose them. Consistency isn't a personality trait, it's a psychological system. And like any system, it can be understood, adjusted, and worked with once you know what you're actually looking at. The first thing neuroscience tells us about consistency is something most people find uncomfortable. The brain doesn't value your goals, it values prediction. Researchers studying the brain's reward circuitry have found that what the nervous system actually optimizes for is the reduction of uncertainty, not achievement, not success, not even happiness. This means that every time you try to build something new, your brain isn't rooting for you. It's quietly running a threat assessment. New behaviors consume more cognitive energy. They introduce unpredictability. And unpredictability, to a nervous system shaped by thousands of years of survival pressure, is something to be cautious about. The inconsistency you feel isn't laziness. It's a well-trained brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. The second rule is about identity, not action. Psychologists who study behavior change have noticed something striking. People don't abandon habits because they stop wanting the outcome. They abandon them when the behavior stops feeling like something they're doing and starts feeling like something they're performing. There's a difference between a person who exercises and a person who is trying to exercise. One is operating from identity, the other is operating from effort. And effort, unlike identity, has a ceiling. It runs out. Identity doesn't. The mental rule here is subtle but powerful. Consistency follows self-concept, not willpower. You will do, reliably and without drama, what you genuinely believe you are. The third layer is about how your childhood environment quietly authored your relationship with sustained effort. If you grew up in an environment that was unpredictable, emotionally, financially, or structurally, your nervous system learned something specific. Don't invest too heavily in long-term outcomes, because the ground can shift without warning. This isn't a conscious decision, it's an adaptation. A nervous system that learned to stay nimble and ready to pivot developed that skill for legitimate reasons. The cost, felt decades later, is that long-term consistency can trigger a low-level alarm, not because you don't want the thing, but because some older part of you learned that wanting things for too long makes you vulnerable. The fourth mental rule is about the architecture of your environment versus the architecture of your intentions. Intentions are fragile. They exist in the prefrontal cortex, the brain's planning and reasoning center, which is also one of the first systems to go offline under stress, fatigue, or emotional dysregulation. Environment, by contrast, is always there. It doesn't require energy to activate. Behavioral scientists have found repeatedly that when the friction between a person and a desired behavior is reduced, even slightly, consistency increases in ways that have nothing to do with motivation. You don't decide your behavior in the moment as much as you think you do. You follow the path of least resistance that your environment has already laid out. This means that consistency is partly a design problem, not a character problem. The seventh rule is perhaps the quietest, and the one most people never reach. It's about the relationship between consistency and meaning, and the hidden cost of pursuing consistency without it. You can build extraordinary levels of reliable behavior in service of a goal that doesn't actually belong to you. People do it all the time. They show up day after day for outcomes shaped by external pressure, inherited expectations, or a version of themselves they've long since grown past. The consistency holds, but something underneath it feels hollow. The rule here is that sustainable consistency is directional. It moves towards something that carries genuine weight for the person doing it, not for the image they're trying to maintain. When the behavior and the self are misaligned, even perfect discipline eventually cracks, not from weakness, from wisdom. What's worth sitting with across all of this is that your history with consistency is not evidence of who you are. It's a record of what your nervous system learned to do under the conditions it was given. The brain that drifts, that restarts, that struggles to hold the thread, that brain was shaped by experience, not by some fixed and permanent character. And experience, unlike character, can be met with understanding. There's no version of this where you're broken. The patterns that feel like failures are almost always adaptations that made sense somewhere earlier in your life, doing a job they were designed to do. The work isn't to punish them out of existence. It's to understand them clearly enough that you can slowly, without drama, begin to work with them rather than work against them. If something in this sat with you, if some part of it named something you felt but never quite had the language for, there's more to explore about how your psychology shapes the way you move through the world. The next piece goes somewhere adjacent to this, and it might explain something else you've been quietly carrying.